Hello everybody and welcome back to my PowerPoint series about Legends of Runeterra history. This video is about Tellstones. What the hell were Tellstones? And why would you pay more mana for a card? So first of all, let's start with what Tellstone cards were and what made them good or bad. So Tellstone cards were a cycle that were printed for each region where you got to pay 1 mana and choose from 3 different cards and get a temporary copy. Tellstones usually needed 2 good cards in order to see play, or else you'd rather just run the actual 1 copy of the card that was good. Tellstones also needed to be versatile to be good. Usually Tellstones would have single target removal, multi-target removal, and some utility. Not all Tellstones followed this cycle, but the good ones usually did. And the +1 mana requirement really barred aggro and mid-range decks from actually using Tellstones, because in those archetypes you really need to be holding on to your mana. You need to use every single point of mana to actually get to your end game. So usually Tellstones only found play in control decks. Tellstones, in my opinion, should have given more removal for landmarks to regions that were suffering against landmarks that didn't really have it to begin with. But a lot of them that were bad at landmark removal stayed bad. And I think that Tellstones were a prototype to the Explorer cycle, which is a topic for another video. And fun fact, Hearthstone thought this design was so good that they decided to copy it with their own set of cards, with like Valera's Gift, Rexar's Gift, all that stuff. So we're starting off with the first Tellstones weren't Tellstones. They were 3 sisters. The flavor is like each spell comes from either Ashe, Sejuani, or Lysandra, who are the 3 sisters who are feuding in the Freljord. It combines stall, protection, and removal all into 1 card, which is exactly what you want to see out of Tellstones. Freljord is a slow region with ramp. They can stand to lose that 1 mana to get the versatility of this card. It has seen so much play ever since its creation, and it even sees play in mid-range. That's how good it is. Fury of the North was originally a +4/+4 card, but now it's a +3/+4. But that happened many patches before 3 Sisters actually came out, so it didn't affect the playability of this card. Bandle Tellstones. So originally, this Tellstone had Keeper's Verdict rather than Electro Harpoon, which is it's a 6 mana slow card that says an ally strikes an enemy. If the enemy survives, they get stunned. That was obviously way too slow and did not play into Bandle's game plan, which is usually aggro, usually impact, rushing down the enemy, or pings. It didn't work for either of the Bandle archetypes. Yordle Contraption was originally 5 mana and then got buffed to 4 mana. That didn't really change the playability of this card. It made it better when you generated it off of Conchologist. The 2 of these cards, Electro Harpoon and Heroic Refrain, were both aggro cards. But the fact that aggro can't really afford to lose any mana anywhere, they would rather just run these cards instead of running Tellstones. Yeah, and Conchologist made this card actually see play, even though it was almost never main decked. Bilgewater Tellstones. These Tellstones were never changed, and they were never good. More Powder itself as a card almost never saw play in keg decks, which is where they belong. Playful Trickster only saw play as Fizz's signature spell, and Chum the Water only saw play when Fizz generated it. So a mixed bag. They all do different things, very different things, and they're all bad. There was no landmark removal added to this, which Bilge really needed. Sunk cost as an 8 mana landmark removal, quote unquote, that just puts the landmark back into the deck, is absolutely horrible. This is Bilgewater's weak point for a very long time. And this card would maybe see play in Mischievous Mariah and Seraphine decks for extra spell triggers and leveling up Seraphine and getting more kegs, but usually line them up was just enough. Demacian Tellstones. Another good case of showing that mid-range can't really afford the extra mana It has a good split of protection, removal, and like mass board buffs. But the problem is with having 4 Demacia in this is that it's absolutely worthless. Any deck that would want to run 4 Demacia will already be playing Sergeant, which gives you a body and generates this spell. This card actually saw a little bit of play in Lux Jace. The paying +1 mana for Detain actually pushed it over the 6 mana threshold, which allowed Lux to much more easily level up and generate her beams. And yet again, Demacia was horrible against landmarks. They only had Captain Eureka, who was an 8 mana spell shield minion that would capture an enemy or landmark, and they still continue to have very horrible landmark removal. Ionian Tellstones. Everybody who saw this when it was revealed knew it was going to be busted. Instead of Ritual Renewal, there was Health Pot, which is 1 mana, heal 3 to anything. And then instead of Gruesome Theater, we had Homecoming, which was a 4 mana fast speed spell. Recall an ally to recall an enemy. With this combination with Health Pot, you could get 12 health for 3 mana with Karma. This made Ionia the de facto control deck. At the time of Ionian Tellstones with Health Pot, if you were not playing Ionia in your control deck, you were playing a sub-optimal deck. Ionia Control's main bad matchup was aggro, and all you had to do with this card is stall until 10, drop Karma, and you would heal. The enemy would be out of steam, and you would be back to near full. This card no longer sees pretty much any play ever since the changes, and thank goodness. It just, people were running 3-ofs on this card and like 2-ofs of health. It was such a headache. It was horrible to see. Noxian Tellstones, probably the most mediocre Tellstones out of all of them. They're close to being okay, but not really. Whirling Death was the only card you really wanted, so you just run Whirling Death. Weapons of the Lost gives you an interesting answer to a question, like if you are running low on value, you could generate a Weapons of the Lost, but that card is so slow, so clunky that it's not going to get you anywhere. And Sharpened Resolve its stats are aggro slanted, being +3, +2, so it's not really good even at protecting your champions, so there was no reason to run this card. Piltover Tellstones. This is amazing. Any control deck in P&Z was running Piltover Tellstones. Karma Ezreal would abuse this card by Karma copying the cards, and it would just go face with old Aftershock, and that would deal so much damage. You'd be dealing 12 damage to the enemy face in one turn, just with Karma and Tellstones. Aftershock went from 4 mana target anything to 3 mana target units, and this obviously made working with Karma worse, but it also made the card better because a cheaper card for landmark removal just made it so you could so easily blow up landmarks or even just remove a 3 health unit. Hextech Transmogulator gave, like, it was very niche because you couldn't target champions with it, but you could pseudo hard removal big enemy units, or sometimes you could even go for surprise lethals, copy the enemy's powerful follower onto yours, like say an elusive attacker or an attacker that's unblocked, and swing for lethal. And are you running low on cards? Do you have a strong board with few cards in hand? I've got the answer for you. Progress Day. They slotted Progress Day into these Tellstones. It's like whatever you have a question for, Piltover Tellstones will give you the answer. And this was the second best Tellstone after Ionian, but after the Ionian Tellstones got nerfed, it became the number 1 and still actually sees play in Eternal. Shadow Isle Tellstones. Really interesting combination of spells. They all want to be doing different things, but this card actually saw play. Crumble used to be 5 mana, but it became 4 mana, which really helped the playability of this card. It found play mostly in Noraheimer control. Mark of the Eye could protect a unit for 1 turn because it would end up dying with Ephemeral anyways. and it could turn trades to your favor. Spirit Journey could protect one of your units, usually Heimerdinger in that deck, from getting Vengeanced or other types of removal, or it could prevent a pretty big attack for one turn. It would delay an enemy attacking you by putting it back, killing it, putting it back on the bench. But sometimes control decks just need that one extra turn. And Crumble in that deck had plenty of friendly targets to actually sacrifice, like Junk Construct, Portal Minions, and turrets. And the two spell triggers really helped Heimerdinger get a wider board in this deck. Shuriman Tellstones saw almost no play on release. Ruthless Predator is extremely out of place. Ruthless Predator is an aggro card, and Weight of Judgment and Spirit of Fire are both removal cards. Just two different archetypes that you don't want to be bridging together in one card by paying one extra mana. Weight used to be a 4-mana card that would deal 7 to followers, but they buffed it or nerfed it down, really a buff, to 3 mana to deal 4 to a follower. This card began to, and still sometimes sees, play in Rise decks. Weight of Judgment is okay to remove some units, and Spirit Fire is really good against wide boards, which Rise can struggle against. And overall, Weight of Judgment is just a bad card. Ruthless is an aggro card, and Spirit is a control card. This card is confused and will most likely never see play without changes in an actual Shurima deck. And finally, Targonian Tellstones. These are the Tellstones possibly with the most changes. Originally, Wish and Paddlestar used to be in the rotation instead of Behold and Hush. So Wish was a 3-mana card that would heal all of your units. Completely useless. Great to have Tellstones with a dead card. Amazing. And Paddlestar had a couple of changes, but it was a card that it was like 3 or 4 mana depending at the time, and it would deal damage to a unit that was either stunned or had attacked this turn. And there was a new card that was printed called Falling Star that was 2 mana, deal 4 to a minion that is stunned or attacked, and that card is the way better version of Paddlestar. After these changes, they began to see some play. After the patch after they made these changes, a Blessing went from 5 mana to 4 mana, so the Blessing of Targon became much cheaper, and then, much later on, Hush was actually reduced from 3 mana to 2 mana. So Targon Control would use Targonian Tellstones mostly to slot in Hush, but at times where Hush wasn't useful, Behold the Infinite generated some nice value, and Blessing of Targon could always be, press the button in case you're scared of your units dying. So conclusion, Tellstones are lazy design. You just slap 3 cards together, call it a new card, but it does bring up interesting design discussions and balanced discussions. It just goes to show you how 1 extra mana can make certain cards so unplayable. Every Tellstone could be busted if they chose different cards. So as we saw, some cards in the past, some Tellstones were really bad because they had bad cards tagged along with them. But as they changed what cards got generated by Tellstones, those cards, or the Tellstones, saw much more play. It could have been a wonderful opportunity to let decks run more tech cards. As they introduced weapon removal, they could change around what the Tellstones generate, but they didn't. They decided to save that later for the Explorers, which I'll get into them. I really do not like Explorers. I think they're also lazy design, but I somewhat do like Tellstones. They bring up an interesting question. Am I willing to pay 1 extra mana for versatility? Anyways, please like, comment, subscribe, share this with your grandma. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, do these things, and have a wonderful day.